Greetings, good morning, and welcome everyone to Mind the Moment. Thank you for joining us in this, our coffee house in the cloud, a place for us to come together, get centered, and feel into the sense of this most present moment. It's June 12th, 2020, which is Loving Day, the anniversary of the date in 1967 when the U.S. Supreme Court struck down by unanimous decision the prohibition on interracial marriage. Richard Loving, a white man, and his wife, Mildred Loving, a woman of mixed African-American and Native American ancestry, had been married in Washington, D.C., but were seeking the right to be married in their home state of Virginia. ACLU lawyer Bernard Cohen, in his successful argument of the case on behalf of the Lovings, stated that his clients, like any other Americans, had the right to feel protected under the law. It is the right of Richard and Mildred Loving, Cohen said, to wake up in the morning or to go to sleep at night knowing the sheriff will not be knocking on their door or shining a light in their face. I'm John Roberts from Harvard Pilgrim Health Care's mindfulness program, and here with me to share this moment is none other than Tara Healey, founder and director of our program. Good morning, Tara. How are you today?
Good morning, John. I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, thanks.
All right, so in just a moment, I will hand things over to Tara to lead us into and then lead us in a 10-minute guided meditation, after which we will dive into some Q&A, and then we'll wrap things up just before 9 a.m. Now, if you haven't already located it, at the bottom of your screen, there is an option to open up a chat box. At anytime, please share with us any questions or comments that you might have. We'd love to hear what's on your mind. Towards those ends, let me ask you this, Tara. Is there anything that you would like to hear about from the folks at home as we're getting started this morning?
Yeah, I want to just check in with people. I mean, given the turbulent times that we're in, and just to see, so how are you feeling this morning?
All right, so it looks like we have a substantial group of people practicing with us this morning. Warm gratitude to everyone for taking the time to be with us and each other. So keep in mind that only Tara and I will be able to see what you type. And if we don't read your question or comment on the air, please know that we do read and appreciate them all. Before we close, I will point out some other ways that you can keep in touch with us as well. So, all right, folks are feeling... Oh, okay. Well, so optimistic. That's very nice. A little bit drained. Okay. Hopeful. That's good. Tired. Well, this is this. I feel like these are the things that we're all feeling. Gratitude. Also, that's wonderful. So, Tara, let me turn it over to you to lead us off from there.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, thanks. And thank you, everybody. And as always, welcome. I want to actually start us off with a quote by the novelist and playwright James Baldwin. And this is a famous quote of his, and it is as relevant as it ever has been. And he says, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." And I feel in a lot of what he's saying, courage and the willingness to bring ourselves to our edges. And the other thing I want to start with before we go into practice is the law professor Rhonda McGee wrote a wonderful book, The Inner Work of Racial Justice, Healing Ourselves and Transforming Our Communities Through Mindfulness. And in it, she provides the definition of racial justice. So I want to kick off this morning's practice inspired by this definition. And what she says is racial justice is taking action against racism in favor of liberation, inspired by love of all humanity, including actions at the personal, interpersonal, and collective level. So it is very action-oriented. Last week, we talked about compassion being a verb. So it is the capacity to feel with and then take action. Rhonda in her book goes on to pose the question, why might it be appropriate to consider engaging in racial justice as an aspect of living mindfully? So why might it be appropriate to consider engaging in racial justice as an aspect of living mindfully? So with that, we're going to do a little bit of a longer meditation. Typically we do, anywhere from, 8 to 10 minutes. I'm going to probably do a little bit closer to, 10 to 12 minutes, and take us through a body scan, which I know we have done before, but working with all of the various emotions that have been arising of late, whether it's fear or anger or, and many of you have emotions that you listed this morning as well. So let's go ahead and get started in practice. So again, as I say, always, you can sit or you can stand. So sitting or standing, and allow your body to settle into the posture that you've decided to assume. And you can leave your eyes open or closed, but if you decide to keep them open, you want to gaze downward. And surrender into the support of the floor or the chair, and ultimately the earth below, knowing that you will be held. And aware of the micro movements of the body to maintain a spine that is straight but not stiff. And let's all begin by taking a deep inhalation through the nose and a longer exhalation through the mouth. And one more time, at your own pace, a deep inhalation through the nose. And a little bit of a longer exhalation. Settling into whole body awareness, aware of the various sensations that are occurring in your body from the activity of the morning so far. And perhaps noticing sound in the room that you're in or outside of the room. And allowing sound to remain in the background. And let's gradually bring the attention, bring awareness back into the body. And we'll start with bringing attention to the very top of the head. And we will sweep attention all the way through to the feet. But beginning at the very top of the head, just noticing sensation or a lack of sensation. Bringing attention down over the sides of the head, including the ears and the back of the head. Bringing awareness to the face. So see if you can soften the muscles of the face. So the forehead and the eyes, the nose, cheeks, jaw, and the mouth. Resting the tongue. And again, just softening to the degree that you can. Bringing awareness to the neck and shoulders. To the upper arms, elbows, forearms, and hands. Softening this region of the body. And perhaps noting any sensations. So in a way, you are like a scientist and a subject. Pulsing, vibration, points of contact. Bringing awareness to the torso, so the entire front of the body and the back of the body. Perhaps noticing the beat of the heart or the points of contact if you are sitting. Bringing awareness down over the hips and thighs. And again, just aware of sensation or lack of sensation. Isolating this part of the body in your field of awareness and softening to the degree that you can. Bringing awareness to the knees, the lower legs, and the feet. And again, aware of sensation or perhaps lack of sensation. Softening this region of the body to the degree that you can. Bringing attention now to the soles of the feet, especially if they are making contact with the surface. Grounding awareness in the points of contact that the soles of the feet make with the surface. Feeling supported and held by the support. And releasing awareness. And now bringing attention to the natural rhythm of the breath. We don't have to make the breath different. And in fact, consider the idea that you are receiving breath. So there's nothing you actually really need to do other than track with your attention, with your awareness, the sensations you notice when you are inhaling and when you are exhaling. In that part of the body that is where it's most pronounced for you, where you can best anchor the wandering mind. The wandering mind is not a problem. It's going to wander. We just simply note that when we have wandered, we're going to escort the attention back to this part of the body that is more pronounced for us when we breathe. And that is the practice. So the mind goes off, you notice, you return. And we do this over and over again as a way to bring some steadiness and ease, some focus and concentration. We then employ that in the service of our life, informing our actions, our speech. So breathing in and breathing out, returning again and again. Noticing where the mind is. And just simply reconnecting with the breath sensation, receiving the breath. And again, simply aware of where the mind is, and kindly, compassionately release the storyline, the planning, the memory, the regret, and then escort the attention back. And as we bring this meditation to a close, may we be peaceful and at ease. May our heart be soft and open. May we be safe and protected, and our bodies healthy and strong. And may the benefit of our practice, may the merit of our practice benefit all beings everywhere. And when you feel ready, if your eyes were closed, you can allow the eyes to open. And, reconnecting.
Thank you for that, Tara. You were talking about Rhonda McGee. Would you mind holding up the book again, just so folks
Sure.
get a better look at it?
Yes.
Okay, so the inner work of racial justice. And in case you can't read the name, it's Rhonda, Rhonda, and McGee. Is that M-A-G or is that M?
M-A-G-E-E. Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep.
All right. Well, so if you don't mind, I'd love to kick off the Q&A by reading a quote from an article by the Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams. It actually appeared in the publication Lion's Roar in February. It was entitled, "Your Liberation is on the Line." So I was turned on to this article by the Kripalu newsletter. And as it happens, the content for Reverend Williams' essay was actually developed in 2018. Okay, so here's what she wrote. Quote, "We get stuck on this notion of white privilege or dominant privilege as if the marginalized people want what the people with privilege have. But I want no part of it. I want no part of any illness that renders people unable to see the beauty of all of our differences. I want no part of an illness that renders me unable to connect to love. That is not a privilege," end quote. So as a beneficiary of white privilege, I was really compelled by this naming of it as an illness. And I was struck by the similarity between white privilege as a kind of illness and COVID-19. As we've learned during the pandemic, a person may not realize they've been infected by the virus, or they may only exhibit mild symptoms of it. But nevertheless, if one's got it, their lack of knowledge does not protect the vulnerable people around them. I'm beginning to see now that I've been walking around my entire life mostly unaware of my white privilege, or at least only slightly aware of it, and certainly not forcefully confronting how it might be affecting others. And unlike with COVID-19, when it comes to white privilege, the thing that I obviously can't do is just bunker down and hope that the illness goes away. So, as you're pointing out, Tara, there's fortunately a lot of resources out there right now to help a person like me confront a disorder like white privilege with an eye towards deprogramming it within myself.
Yeah.
But turning just to mindfulness specifically, can mindfulness help us train ourselves to become more aware of these issues at some sort of bodily level so that we might become better at embodying the values that we want to going forward?
Yeah, yes. I mean, mindfulness is it's a lot of things, but in many ways it's a deep practice of self-understanding. And so if we have an intention to better understand our racial history, there will be a lot of emotions that come up around that, because for most of us, unless you're a teenager, like 15, 16, 17, most of us did not get an accurate history lesson. We had complete omissions, washed over, just not. And so as we continue to do this work, and in fact, if you look at the New York Times paperback nonfiction bestsellers, they are almost all exclusively about racial injustice or racial justice. And so as one begins to engage in understanding our history, in reading and taking courses, in which it is, if you're white, it is our obligation to do this work. You will be confronted with all kinds of emotions. And I have been involved in this work since the 90s, back in Harvard Pilgrim was really on the forefront of what at that time was called, we were called diversity ambassadors. And, you know, the emotions that arise around this work are really intense, and the physical expression very intense. So mindfulness can help us see our, you know, it helps us see everything. So it helps us see the parts of ourselves we're least proud of or feel least good about, as well as working with the physical sensations. So guilt, denial, shame, remorse, like, you know, there's anger. I mean, there's so much in there. And I think mindfulness can serve us incredibly well.
Yeah, you know, so I was raised in Iowa, and so I knew from an early age that I wasn't getting a terribly good education. I had a girlfriend in high school who had Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States,
Yeah.
but it was passed around like contraband, like it was like the you know, anarchist cookbook or something, right? But then
Yeah.
when I moved out to the East Coast, I just automatically assumed that everyone else had a much better education, and in a lot of ways they had, and so it's only dawning on me recently how we all sort of were lacking in this particular information.
Yeah.
As you say, if you're a person of a certain age. So I want to make sure that people feel very welcome and invited to ask Tara
Yes. Yeah. I would
questions.
love to hear from the community this morning. You know, what questions, thoughts, observations do you have?
As we're waiting for people to type in, I wanted to just bring something up, Tara, that came up the other week. So several sessions ago, we were talking about the idea of mindfulness as observing our own actions and thought patterns. And somebody asked in the chat box, does this mean that you're coming out of yourself and observing? So we didn't have a chance to address this at the time, but I
Yeah.
think it's an important point to clarify. I was wondering if you could speak to what it means or even feels like to observe oneself mindfully, knowing that what we're not talking about is some sort of out of body experience per se.
Right. Well, that's actually just where I was going to go, John. I think, you know, one of the challenges of this format is that we can't get more information. So what I would say is, what do you mean coming out of yourself? Because it's not a disembodied, detached observation. It's the complete opposite of that. In fact, it is the capacity to see what's on our mind, what we are leaning into, what we push away. Um, so it's a very much an embodied as opposed to disembodied. And I almost read in the question that it's the understanding is it might be more disembodied, but it is, if you can think of it as a very much a turning toward. And the thing is, when we're in meditation, there are a couple of different sort of stages, but one of the stages is we're just trying to get some steadiness by, you know, each time the mind wanders into thought, actually where the mind goes in that moment is giving us some really helpful information about ourselves. So we're making note of that. You know, that's not getting lost, but we're not following that train. We're actually getting off at the station and coming back. Once you have some steadiness of mind, you're then actually letting go of the object and moving into choiceless awareness. And you are literally just noticing the arising and passing of every thought, emotion, and body sensation. As an observer, as like a scientist and a subject with a receptive attitude. And I would also say with a big dose of compassion, because we will see parts of ourselves that we're less pleased with. And can we see those things that arise within us in a culture we've been born into? Can we see all of that without hostility towards ourselves for having it, but know that that's part of us?
Yeah, I like what you're saying here because I think what you're getting at is that this isn't a practice of bringing the body and mind further apart, but in fact bringing them closer together.
Right.
Um, and okay, good. So I would actually bring us back around to what we were speaking about a moment ago. So Tara, you and I have had a couple chances in the past week to reflect in different virtual venues like this one on how our professional roles have changed. In many ways, drastically in the past few months. And
Yes.
that includes how we're approaching mindfulness training in general. I wonder if you have any reflections on how the ways that you've been teaching mindfulness have changed since the pandemic, beginning of the pandemic, but also in light of the recent protests that have been going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, well, a few things. Number one is that we have never been able to reach so many people through this medium, which my preference is always face to face to be with people, but I am actually seeing that the capacity to reach, double and triple and even more is enhanced through this time of difficulty that we find ourselves in. But the focus is, where I guess I've been more leaning is really working with difficult emotions. And so that holds true for the uncertainty around COVID, but now the uncertainty around racial justice and race relations, and this really difficult part of our history that I feel like with George Floyd's murder that we are. It feels different to me, and I have been involved in this work since the mid-90s. So something feels different to see so many of the New York Times paperback nonfiction be around. This has not happened ever. And so the complex of emotions that arise and the capacity to take action grounded in skillful awareness that this practice will help us see our own racism, our own understanding that if you are white, that white is in fact a race. And so seeing with much greater clarity that which we did not necessarily think that much about. So on a lot of levels, kind of emotional and physical, working with the body is these practices, as well as seeing habits and patterns of mind.
Well, as we go forward to do this work in ourselves in preparation for doing work in society, I have this quote from Friedrich Nietzsche, which I've been reflecting on. This is something he wrote in 1880. Quote: "Never give way to remorse, but immediately say to yourself, that would merely mean adding a second stupidity to the first. If you have done harm, see how you can do good." End quote. All right. So as we're closing out here, I wanted to, a couple of things. First, I wanted to, mention that, Tara, you and I have had a busy week in the web this week. On Tuesday and Wednesday, you led our very first free, public, and virtual workshops introducing the basic principles and practices of mindfulness. Now, for the folks watching, if you missed these sessions, fear not, we will be posting recordings of them on our YouTube page later today. So please don't run to youtube.com/mindthemoment. And we'll be back with you every Tuesday and Friday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. You can find the links to these sessions and other sessions and other resources, I should say, on our main site at harvardpilgrim.org/mindfulness. And drop us a line at askmtm@harvardpilgrim.org, or leave a comment on our Facebook page. Let us know what's new in your world, but also, do you have any questions for our experts? You can even leave a voicemail at my desk number if you like. That's 617-509-7047. You can rewatch this session, older sessions, and those introductory sessions on our YouTube page, and find guided meditations on our SoundCloud page. So Tara, thank you so much for your generosity in leading us this morning. I'm wondering if you would mind leaving us with one resource that you think people might find especially useful as they continue to grow their practice.
I'm actually going to leave you with two. So one, if you are identify as white, whiteawake.org is a wonderful organization. And about 18 months ago, I took a 6-week course called Roots Deeper Than Whiteness, which covers our history, very detailed coverage of our history and what we didn't learn. The other is the Racial Justice Initiative, and that's Brian Stevenson's organization. And a movie called Just Mercy came out about him. I don't know if anybody has seen Just Mercy, but that his book and movie are wonderful. So I would say I'm going to leave you with both of those.
Those are your weekend assignments, folks. All right, thank you everyone for joining us today. It was great to see you all. We hope to see you again very soon. All right.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Have a momentous day, folks.